Hi everyone, how are you today? I wanted to show you some old Wordsworth classics from the early 1990s. I was inspired by a conversation I had, and someone was telling me how terrible the Wordsworth Classics covers are. I was a little taken aback because my experience with the line of books is from their early 1990s editions. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to go back and look at the old covers and then do a video about the new covers. But that'll be the next video after this one. I didn't want to just roast Wordsworth Classics because they were the original classics I read from way back when I was a small child. We actually got them on sale when the mall still had a bookstore. So this is kind of a commemorative episode. I've been reviewing books for about 10 years now, and I just thought it was worth acknowledging Wordsworth Classics part in my reading journey. One of the first books I actually read was this copy of Oliver Twist. And what happened was my mom picked these up at the bookstore when they were on sale. She had really enjoyed watching Masterpiece Classic and Masterpiece Theater with my dad. I was really excited to read these because my parents were really excited about Dickens, the stories. So I just started reading them. I'll be honest, I didn't understand probably 60% of these books, but I loved them. I loved the writing and the characters and the atmosphere. I really felt like I was traveling back in time. So I read Dickens. I read other Dickens from the library. Also this copy of Jane Eyre, which was probably the first classic I fell in love with. The funny thing about this cover is it's clearly from the Regency era based on their attire. But I just thought that because I love the story so much, this gal became Jane Eyre for me for the longest time. Yeah, so I have fond memories of reading this book multiple times when I was like 12. Another one that was of the original collection of my parents is 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne. I really love this cover because of the sea monsters. It actually doesn't say who painted this. It just says Jurassic Seascape, English School, 20th Century Natural History Museum in London. So I really don't have any more information other than that. But love the story, love the cover. Here's another cover that I really like. This is Robinson Crusoe. And this one, I think the picture is actually an illustration of Robinson Crusoe, unattributed from a 1903 edition. Anyway, it's pretty cool. I actually have not read this book. Here's their cover for Silas Marner. This is, again, not matching the era when this takes place. This painting is much later. But it's a nice picture, and the girl has yellow golden hair, which is really key to the story. So I think it's a good cover. The Red Badge of Courage. I really like this cover. The crop is really good. You've got the US flag up here because something in design is that most people look at anything from top to right and top to bottom, so you want the more important things to be up here. And it's just a cool picture. I have read this one. I didn't love it, but I think it's a worthy American classic nonetheless. Jules Verne, Around the World in 80 Days. This is a nice cover. It's a little less busy than some of their other ones. It's got the old, very circular kind of hot air balloon style, which you'll see a lot in those older pictures of hot air balloons. I have read both of these books. I like Around the World in 80 Days a bit better, but 5 Weeks in a Balloon is pretty fun too. But does have a lot of dated stuff in it. The Professor by Charlotte Bronte. I read this one, I want to say last year. This was the last Charlotte Bronte novel that I read, and I just love this painting. It's actually one of my favorite paintings anyway. It's called Signing the Register. It's by Edmund Blair Leighton, or Leighton. It's kind of a fairly well-known painting. And then The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I actually picked this up secondhand. I already had a copy of The Great Gatsby, but I really like this painting. I believe this is from the 1920s. It doesn't really say. It's called A Pause for Thought by Delphin and Holross. I'm assuming that's Spanish, but I could be completely wrong. Okay, so this was kind of the first era of Wordsworth Classics with these kind of stylized spines. Then the next version of these books, they kind of went with a more simplified, slightly more modern style. So this would be going into, I think, the mid-1990s. Let's have a look here. 1994. Okay, so still pretty early. But you'll see a slightly different design, and a very much simplified spine. Sir Nigel. This is a medieval historical fiction novel by the author of Sherlock Holmes. I really enjoyed the first book of this, which was called The White Company. Sir Nigel was okay, but it's a prequel, and it kind of read like a prequel, but it's still a good medieval story. Let's see, Pinocchio. Now this one does have a slightly different cover. So this is 1995. It's pretty similar, and they're still using these classic paintings and illustrations. Black Beauty, yet another variation of the cover, but still featuring a painting. This is 1993. Robin Hood by Henry Gilbert. I have not read this one. I like the cover though. This is, the cover illustration is Robin Hood by Daniel Maclise, 1806 to 1870. So yeah, very relevant cover picture. Alice in Wonderland. This is the first edition that I read. I like this cover. It's not a full painting or a full page painting because the illustrations for Alice in Wonderland are mostly little vignettes. But I like what they did with this. And then they did the same thing for this complete Lewis Carroll, so kind of like that as well. And I just have a few more. Treasure Island, Robert Louis Stevenson. This is one of my favorite books from way back. I've read it a lot of times, probably, well, for me, 3 or 4 is a lot of times. This also has the old illustrations. And this was another classic I fell in love with as a kid. Great story. The Secret Garden. It's a beautiful painting. And I think it really, this cover is probably one of the best because it really does show Mary Lennox. I mean, this girl in the garden by herself. And it's called The Little Gardener by Joseph Harold Swanwick. I've never actually seen this picture anywhere else, but they did a good job choosing that one. And one more, Robert Louis Stevenson, Kidnapped. This is one of my favorite books of all time, and I've read it a number of times. This is a great picture. Not necessarily the key feature of the story, even though there is a scene at sea, but it's still a nice cover. All right, so those are the Wordsworth Classics that I grew up with and some that I've collected since then. So I'll do another video on the new Wordsworth Classic covers, but I just wanted to acknowledge that Wordsworth has really some beautiful copies out there, and you can find these secondhand if you know what to look for. So yeah, thanks for watching. Please like the video if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.